Well, it's a new twist on an old story, and that's why we need to tell this story again, because of how revealing it is. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green Scott. This is your member-sponsored Right Angle, brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com, who also bring you all of the other content. But in this case, they've pretty much as a group decided that even their own members-only content needs to go out there. So bless those people, and they are the salt of the earth. And if you want to become one of them, we'd love to have you. I think that the Freedom of Information Act is the best thing that was ever put on paper since the Constitution was actually finalized with the first 10 amendments. The idea that any American citizen could sue any government agency in order to obtain information that was not distinctly classified for specific reason is just grand. RICO is up there, but it's still FOIA for me. And so from what I suspect was a person's Freedom of Information Act request, we find now some details about the actual police encounter with Jussie Smollett. Now, you remember Jussie Smollett as the good-looking young gay actor from Empire who lit the world on fire with his accusations that he had been given a sound thrashing, as well as being taunted both racially and for his sexual orientation by men wearing a MAGA hat, the Donald Trump. Thank you, Steve. By men wearing a MAGA hat, and so on. It turns out, as we have access to these pictures now, there's another wrinkle to the story. Turns out that as police entered his apartment, Jussie Smollett not only had been assaulted and had bleach thrown on him to make him white, he also had a noose around his neck. And when I say noose, I mean kind of a string. I find it absolutely indicative of the level of sophistication on this hoax that the first words spoken out of the mouth of the police officer when he sees Jussie Smollett with this so-called noose around his neck is, "Hey, you want to take that off?" To which he replied, "Yeah, but I wanted you to see it first." Steve, looks like you've been having Indian trouble out there in Colorado. Yeah. I feel your pain. And certainly the props that you bring to this story are worthy of the seriousness of it, but it is more serious than a joke, because what Jussie Smollett is saying and has said is that he said this is precisely what he's saying. He's saying that the people who voted for Donald Trump are the same kind of people that not only issue racial slurs and homophobic slurs, but who are just one split second away from taking young black men off the streets of America, tying them to a tree, and lynching them, as happens every single day in America of the progressive mindset. What do you have to say about all of this? Because to me, the noose is yet another example of this reaching for victimhood that marks the left and that I consider to be a form of just barking mad insanity.
Oh, no, racial violence is quite real. The American Indians have been waging war on white privileged internet pundits for years now, and I was the victim of a recent attack just in between segments that we recorded on this day, as you can clearly see from this completely real and totally genuine arrow that has been shot straight through my head by American
I'll
Indians.
Notify the police department immediately.
Well, I'm not going to pull this arrow out. I'm not going to go to the emergency room. I'm going to sit here at my desk with the totally genuine arrow through my head until the police arrive. Bill, I know you're trying to be serious about this, but I have
the fact that you had one of those in reach is impressive to me, frankly.
I got a little bit of everything. I really do. Actually, I bought that for. I went to a science fiction convention a couple of years ago, and I went as every Star Trek red shirt. I had the red shirt on, the boots, the black pants, but I put on all the scar makeup and various wound tattoos, and I was wearing an ace bandage around my knee. I had the arrow through the head. It was a fun costume to wear. Let me tell you my favorite story from parenthood, or at least one of them. My 13-year-old must have been 3 years old at the time, maybe as old as 4, but I don't think so. Just old enough to put on a show, but young enough to think he could get away with this thing. And what he did was, I can't remember what it was he got in trouble for, but Melissa and I scolded him, and he very quietly left the living room for a moment. And I don't know this for a fact, but I think what he did was he went to the mirror that hangs in the hallway next to our bedroom, kind of between the living room and the bedroom. And he comes back about 2 minutes later, and I don't know how he managed to do it, but he managed to squeeze out like a tear out of his eye. You could just barely see the single drop that was so small it's not even really sliding very far down his face. And he stomps back in the room and looks at us accusingly for having dared to scold him, points at this minuscule little tear that he squeezed out and says, "I have a tear!" And Melissa and I did what any concerned parents would do in that moment, and we burst out laughing. I mean, usually we take turns, okay? When the kids catch us by surprise, one of us will stifle the laugh while the other one has to go into genuine parenting mode, right? And in this time, no, neither one of us could manage. Neither one of us could be the grown-up. We just burst out laughing. And so when you see the story of a privileged actor who has made a noose out of macrame or one of those frilly things at the top of the curtains or whatever, the proper response is to burst out laughing, and maybe, just maybe, they won't try that silly stunt again.
I'm not entirely convinced that is the case, but we will see, I suppose. Scotty, one of the most satisfying things that I ever get to watch on the web is watching actual SEALs who are retired and now in civilian life, catching people who are pretending to be SEALs. It's called stolen valor. People who never were in the military get dressed up in Marine Corps dress uniforms, or they wear the trident or whatever the case may be, and they walk around and they enjoy the congratulations and the offers for free drinks and all the rest of it. And then the actual SEALs hunt these people down and put them on the spot and make them grovel at least as much as they deserve and so on. And I was thinking about this Jussie Smollett thing with the noose around the neck. And this is stolen outrage. It's stolen injustice is what it is. It's cheapening in the same way that these stolen valor guys the same way that a guy who's never been in combat walking around wearing medals and tridents from SEAL teams cheapens what the real soldiers actually do. Smollett's adoption of a noose around the neck, to me, is another order of magnitude more offensive than it was before. He is taking what was a legitimate and serious national catastrophe and claiming it for himself because of the rigors of being a young, good-looking star on a hit television show. It's kind of disgusting. It's not kind of.
Well, there were people actually lynched in this country over the years.
Yes, this is my point.
There were people who were oppressed because of their race. There were people who have been beaten, who actually have had caustic fluids thrown on them, although that's more popular in India than it ever has been in the United States. But this stuff has actually happened to people. And to stage it like this and to make it seem like, you have a common bond with those people who were legitimate victims of racial violence is just not only ridiculous for you, but it's denigrating and demeaning and trivializing to people who have actually suffered. The way that police know that you've had a noose around your neck is because you have rope burns on your neck. It's not because you have a string still hanging over your shoulders. You wanted to make sure they saw it. I mean, it's comical if it weren't so awful. I mean, it reminded me of that scene.
That's
what was
well
it
said.
when in Airplane where they was like, assume crash positions and everybody kind of goes like this, It's like nobody does this. If you were actually attacked and there was a rope around your neck, the first thing you would do is get the rope off your neck. I mean, it's instinctive. You don't have to be told. You're like, no, let's keep the rope on so when the police get here, they'll know I was really attacked by a rope. It just makes you realize that you don't have to be very smart to be in the movie business or television.
I'm shocked. Shocked to discover this.
It is as bad as that, Steve's son going in the other room and, sprinkling some water on his eye and coming back. I mean, it just seems ridiculous. Now, what's even worse about this whole thing, I think, is the play that it's getting in the media now, this sort of hazy picture with the face blurred out, because initially they blurred his face out because they thought he was a victim. And then later on, when they found out that he may not have been a victim, that he may have actually staged all of this, then it wasn't as important. But the blurred out face with the rope, it makes it look like some sort of really horrible type of picture from the past. And I think that anybody, it's kind of like the people from the Holocaust Museum going to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and saying, look, we would like to send you to Buchenwald and to take a tour with an actual Holocaust survivor of a concentration camp. And they didn't say it this way, but basically they're saying, so you will never again make an analogy between concentration camps and what's happening on the U.S. southern border. And that it's disgusting when famous people use this as a way to draw attention to themselves. And again, I don't know whether to laugh or just to cry.
I'm going with B on this one. There's so much here to unpack, and one of the things that Scott touched on was just the stupidity of it, just the theatrical stupidity of it. The idea that I have to show the rope around my neck to prove that I was actually nearly lynched. There's video footage of the two people that he hired to do this job. Wear Donald Trump hats and hurl racial epithets and then pretend to lynch somebody. They have to bring in people from Nigeria because it's a job that Americans just won't do. And in the video of these two brothers in the car, they're both wearing hazmat suits. They're wearing white paper suits with the pullover things on the shoes. They're wearing gloves. They're wearing hairnets. Undoubtedly because Jussie Smollett at some point did a guest appearance on CSI New York and understood that leaving telltale hair or DNA evidence might crack wide open this otherwise airtight case. None of this would be more than just an annoying and disgusting ranting of a deeply disturbed person. But there are two things here that really do matter. First of all, he's not in jail. And he's not in jail because he's friends with Barack Obama and he was in Chicago. There were 16 counts of something like that against him. And because he's famous, he's out on the streets talking about how unfair it all is. But much worse than this, much worse than this, is the idea that many people do believe, if not what actually happened to him, then that the possibility exists, that at any moment a young, gay black man may be snatched off the streets by MAGA hat-wearing Trump supporters who will throw acid on him to make him white before stringing him up to a tree and then driving away. The fact that this doesn't happen is in itself a statement. The fact that you have to manufacture evidence for something that's not there is itself a statement about who you are and what you believe. But the whole thing is powered by this unbelievable narcissism. I mean, if you're a progressive, your stature, your value in the world doesn't come from what you've achieved. It comes from how victimized you are. Now, Jussie Smollett goes into this game with a pretty strong hand. Black, points there. Gay, absolutely. You coming into the game with, three of a kind. But that's not enough in Hollywood, where everybody is young and black and gay or whatever, at least his associates are. And so now what do? Well, you have to increase your victimhood quotient. You have to increase your credibility, your standing, your social status is determined by victimhood. And so now we're going to add a couple things that are going to really, really take the cake and win you the golden key. We're going to have racial harassment, and we're going to have sexual orientation harassment. And we're going to have bleach thrown on you because we want you to be white. And we're going to put a noose around your neck because this is the kind of thing that could happen at any single moment here in the America of the fantasy of the left. You know, if there are no Nazis and there are no Trump supporters and there are no lynchings and there's none of this stuff going on and it hasn't gone on for 100 years practically, if none of that stuff's happening, what do you need progressives for? And now you know why this evidence is being manufactured, because we have run out of supplies of natural outrage, and now we're forced to rely on synthetic outrage, which is produced in large quantities by the people out there who are determined to change everything they don't like about the society that's given them everything. It's a disgrace. And we mean to keep pointing that out to people. That'll do it for this edition of Right Angle, made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com. If you want to be one of the few people that get this word out to everybody in spite of algorithms and demonetization and all the rest of the things they're trying to do to get us to shut up, well, if you want to be one of the people to keep this message going, we'd love to have you on. Join the members over at BillWhittle.com. And welcome to the family. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next week on Right Angle.